Welcome to the Green Room podcast. It's a series of interviews we're doing over a number of weeks with individuals who've been involved in Manx amateur drama over many years, from people who have decades worth of involvement in Manx drama to those who are relatively new and somewhere in between, which I think is, I would like to think without being too flattering, where Howard and I, so myself, John Walker and Howard Caine here at Manx Radio, have been involved with.
Absolutely. So we'll try and feature as many people as we can. If you've got any one you think would be an ideal person to come and have a chat in our virtual green room, get in contact. Howard Caine, that's Caine with an E, C-A-I-N-E at manxradio.com, and we'd love to feature them. We're starting off today with a man, there can't be many people within the drama world who don't know him. That's Mr. Michael Lees. Lovely to have you in the studio. Thanks for coming along, Michael. And well, your association, as John was just saying, that where did you start out with
Well,
this?
I was looking up my notes, Howard, and the start of the Manx Amateur Drama Federation was in the early 1940s. Nothing to do with me, I might add. But the Easter Festival started in 1950, and the first winners were the 13 players of Bristol, and the play was Canaries Sometimes Sing. So that's as far back as we go. I think there have been 2 instances where there was no Easter Festival, but that's a pretty good record. And in 2025, we celebrate our 75th year of Easter Festivals.
And your own interest in drama, does that go back as long as you can remember? Have you always been a drama?
Yes, and my first
fan?
interests were the Guild, and my mother used to take me along to watch it, and then I was performing in the Guild, and then I got involved with the Legion Players. Now, MADF, what it is actually a union for amateur theatre. I know it's not very politically correct these days to say anything about unions, but it started really as a union to bring all the groups on the island together. And each group sent 2 people to our meetings to represent whatever group they were in. That was musicals and drama societies, and we held our meetings fairly regularly. I, at the age of 18, was the Legion Players rep, and I've been involved for 50 years now, so that's all beginning to add up. I was 12 years as the chairman and twice once president. All parts of the island were represented. Some are no longer exist. People like St Mary's Players, Student Players, Raven Players, Ramsey, all gone now. After some years, because it didn't begin with the festival, as I say, it was in the 1940s, and that was purely to do with getting people involved in theatre. But after some years, it was decided to form a festival for visiting teams. Now, this is the important thing. People say, oh, yes, what was it for local teams? No, it wasn't. It was to actually encourage teams to come from across, because originally it was the Tourist Board, as they used to be known, who wanted to involve a festival so that this would encourage people to come to the island. And it worked. The first one, of course, was not in the Gaiety Theatre, but in the Palace Ballroom Theatre, which, of course, is now long gone. But that's where the first one was, and then later transferred to the Gaiety. And the first festivals, of course, were in May to do with the May Whitsun holiday, but then they transferred to Easter, and we've been at Easter ever since. That particular, when I was involved in those very early days, we were a very politically minded group, and when the Gaiety came onto the open market for sale, we became the driving force to encourage the Manx government to buy the theatre. After many months of Tynwald debating the subject, it was put through a motion to buy the Gaiety Theatre, and this was proposed by Jack Nivison, and this is the important part. It was recorded in Hansard, which is the record, of course, of Tynwald, that the Gaiety Theatre would always be available for some weeks to the amateur theatre. So that's real gold, that the amateur theatre is protected by Tynwald, so that we'll always be able to use the Gaiety.
Which is wonderful.
It's amazing history, isn't it? That a festival like that and its origins, which sometimes get lost over time, people think, oh, as you say, why don't local teams? Well, we do get local teams that enter, but the comment is sometimes made, oh, why have we got more local teams? But it's to attract people, and the excitement that you get. One of the things we're talking about the green room here, I mean, this is to pick up some of the conversations that we have after the Easter Festival when touring players come. There's some amazing performances we've seen over the years of saying, how lucky we are to have that theatre. And the fact that the association didn't start with the
Yes.
Gaiety is something that's
Yes.
come to it
Yes.
later on.
The teams are now coming from the British Isles, era, Europe, but we've also changed insofar as the only time that a local team was brought in was if we had a late withdrawal. Then we'd ask a local team would they be prepared, and it was usually a play that they had on the stocks that they'd already done maybe a few weeks earlier, and that's how the amateur local movement started to come into the festival. It's now changed again, and local teams can enter from the beginning now. So there we are, that's how things have changed. But in those early days, for some of your listeners, they might remember such people as Tudor Players from Manchester, very popular team. The London Group Theatre, Martello were from Era, Sedgefield, University Players Hamburg, and these teams were all winners and included only 2 Manx teams to ever win the Legion. Win. One was the Legion Players and the other was the Russian Players. And I'm very proud to say that I was in the Legion Players winning play. I was a young lad in those days and playing the juvenile lead. The play was called Angels and Love, and boy, did we enjoy winning that. Some of the things that I thought might be of interest to people who are interested in the history of the theatre. The magnificent Cubban Trophy, which is awarded annually as the best prize, was given by the Reverend Fred Cubban, who was a great character himself, always sat in this same box every year to come and watch the amateur theatre's work. But one of his rules, which we had to stick to, was he wouldn't allow a play to be performed on a Sunday. And until he stepped down, that was the rule. Now, of course, we're more than happy to have an entry on a Sunday, but that's how it came about. Names of some of those early people that were involved in the founding of the Amateur Drama Federation, people like Kathleen Cowan, MHK, Betty Hanson, MHK, Olga Cowell, who was service players. All of them were really terrific members of the organisation. Dick Crane, who was service players, his cup is there. Jack Lynch, St Mary's Players. May Quayle, her daughter Brenda, of course, well known to the audiences from the musical societies. Well, her mother was a treasurer for many years of MADF. Ori Wrangham, who was Russian Players, that's down the south of the island. And Vanda Lambert, who was the student players. Jane Brill was Legion Players. Molly Corkle Legion, Jennifer Hall. And every trophy that we still present is named after one of those early founders. So that's a great history through the years.
And I think that's it. I think it does have that great history and link back to so many people who've been treading the boards on the Isle of Man, and particularly in the Gaiety over the years, and keeps the names alive as well. Because I think even in my time working, some of those people you rattled off, I knew and had done plays with, or had worked with one way or another, but fame or sort of popularity being the fickle thing it is, it doesn't take too long before, unless there is something like this, these names just disappear into oblivion.
And it's a good reason to keep the cups, because that's an ongoing debate. People say, well, we've got a lot of cups, can we give some a rest? Well, no, they are representing people who gave a lot of work to the Federation, so that's why we keep them going. In the more recent history of the MADF, Aileen Cunningham, who was treasurer for 20 years, and Mark Clift, who was her partner, their untimely deaths over 10 years ago now, was a great blow to the Federation, because they both worked tirelessly. But there we are, that's the way it goes. In the last period of the last 12 months, we've lost such names as Olga Gray, Jean Webb, Carol Clark, all presidents and all stalwarts of MADF, and of course Jenny Green, who was a great representative of I think it was the operatic, and she worked tirelessly backstage and helped with makeup and all that sort of thing. Daphne Clark, of course, was a very popular chairman. Renee Savage and Dorothy Cannon, both representatives of the DCU, and as I said at the very beginning, that's how it all started, that people came along as representatives and then started to get really involved, and that's when they actually started to become permanent members, really, of MADFA. Of course, we mustn't forget backstage team, such names as George Crane and Tony McAvoy, who were great institutions in the Gaiety Theatre, and we long remember them and the fun that we had, because it was really fun in those days, backstage with those two characters, as I'm sure you remember, Howard.
Characters, I think, sums it up very well.
Yes.
Some of the stories perhaps will need to stay in the green room, perhaps, rather than being broadcast on the airwaves.
I think that would probably be wise. Indeed. Relationships, I suppose. I mean, the great thing is you mentioned some of the visiting groups coming over. I know there's been some long-term sort of friendships and relationships developed as well.
Oh, tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And actually, the Easter Festival, which is now renowned in the touring festival world, is still considered to be the best festival in the British Isles. And I think it's partly, John, you mentioned the Gaiety Theatre, it's partly to do with the Gaiety Theatre, the fact that people just love having that experience. But the other half is they love the hospitality they receive when they're here on the island from the Manx community, both as people who support the theatre and as the people who actually help them put the plays on. So that's tremendous. And to think that we are considered to be the best festival in the British Isles, which is really great, because we have had teams from Europe and from Era just love coming to the Isle of Man, so that's really great.
It's one that I mean, if you weren't because Sharon and I, over the weekends we were down in London watching some plays, and as amazing as the performances are, we comment on every theatre we go into, just the difference between some of those who obviously they seem a lot more use, but that and the Gaiety, the draw. I mean, it's quite an effort to commitment to come over here, but when you do and to see the performances night in, night out, that of such a standard, it's one of the, particularly this last year, the performance standard I thought was excellent.
Yes.
But there's so much more to MADFA than the Easter Festival. Like you mentioned, Jenny Green, where I have her to thank for my. When the Young Actor of Man, which is often staged around the same time.
Yes.
It used to be one of the great things I'd enjoyed about the Easter Festival. Obviously, the Young Actor of Man was on at the same time, so the adjudicator would award both, and then you'd get all of the young actors on the stage and presented in front of the Manx community. This is the best actor on the Isle of Man. This is the Young Actor of Man for this year, and congratulations, off you go to drama school for a week as your prize. There's so many names that you mentioned there who've got a history. Is there one particular memory that you have of involvement, whether it's the festival or a different element of MADFA, which particularly sticks in your mind?
Well, during my chairmanship, we organised drama weekends. They were such fun, but we did work hard, but they were such fun. We went to different hotels on the island. That was really great. We organised fancy dress balls at the Empress Hotel, which then has gone on to become our headquarters, and we forged very close links with the National Drama Festivals Association. This is the organisation that organises the best winning plays throughout Britain, and then they come together 1 week in July to find out the best of the best. And I served on the NIDFA Council as chairman, and then in total did 25 years. I retired last year, and my place has now been, I'm very pleased to say, been taken over by Sharon. But I suppose one of my highlights that you asked me, John, and this is always now permanently there at the back of my brain, one of my proudest moments was during my chairmanship, March the 30th, 2002, the last night of our festival. I went on stage before the play commenced and asked the audience to stand. I then announced that Her Majesty, the Queen Mother, had died. But the irony was that waiting in the wings to perform were the Martello players from Era, and although Republicans, they all stood for that anthem that was played. So that's one of my great memories.
The camaraderie, the respect that there is between the groups. It's with a lot of festivals you go to. I mean, we find this with the One Act Festival, which is a predominantly, although to a lesser extent in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I know that there was an influx of UK and other teams coming over. It's the camaraderie that you get between the teams, and the reason that they come back year in year out. As you mentioned, part of it's the Gaiety, but also it's the friendships that they build up, and the shared experiences. And interestingly enough, Sharon and I, we were messaging one of the groups in near London for their base to go and watch one of their plays when we were down there,
right.
saying, well, what have they got on? And we'll go down and see some of their plays while we're over there. It's wonderful to build those connections because, I mean, if you go back to the 1950s, 60s, amateur drama was, I wouldn't say bigger necessarily, but it was one of the... We have seen I don't say a shrinking perhaps, or a refining of the way in which people act. There's much more on the musicals side, and perhaps less so on the pure. I say pure is probably a bit snobbish to say pure drama side, but more
exactly what you mean.
On that side rather than on musicals.
Yeah. And I think audiences have changed over the years too. They really are quite an educated audience these days. They know what they want, they know what they expect, and when they come to a festival, they've got very keen ideas. As much as the adjudicator, they know what they want to see. They know when it's not right. And they're a keen bunch.
No, there's definitely this that when you hear the adjudications, there's did you see? And yes, there's definite. I mean, that's part of the idea of doing this series, is to get a sense of it's recreating that atmosphere, because obviously for listeners, they won't necessarily, unless they've been to one of the festivals, get that sense of just how vibrant the conversation is after each night, because there's green room each night in the Empress Hotel after the performances, and usually there's quite a lot of people that will come every night to come and discuss the plays and talk about their thoughts, and as you say, quite a particular audience in certain aspects. I'm not sure about that, or I really like that. We were talking just before we came on air about a couple of performances where it's the use of certain props. I really like that idea, and there was one we saw this last year where Importance of Being Earnest that won, Muttley and Manx. It's Importance of Being Earnest, where the lead character at the beginning comes up from one of the tracks.
Oh yes, that was
just
wonderful.
Wearing a pair of boxer shorts, singing to "I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt."
That was fantastic.
Away. It's a great reinterpretation, reimagining of that play. What's it, 100 and how many years old that it is now?
Yes.
So is there? Would you say one of the questions I was wanting to ask you is there any particular play that you have done as part of the festivals that you think, I'd love to do that again, or a part that you've played that I'd love to go back if I could and recreate that now?
Lots of them, really, John, plays that I've seen over the years. And as you say, sometimes now, they're bringing in new ideas to the same material. And that's really exciting and really interesting. And it's one of the reasons why, because when you see the programme, you think, oh, I've seen that before. But then if you keep going and watch it, you'll discover, oh, it's totally different, this play, and it works. So I'm not sure. I think some of the Irish plays have been just fantastic. I can think of The May, which one of the Irish teams did. Absolutely fabulous. Juno and the Paycock, really fantastic plays. And of course, what the Irish bring, that maybe some teams don't have, they have that great sense of fun, both on stage and backstage and in the green room. They really have a great sense of fun, and really great to watch one of their plays, because we don't see many Irish authors, and those plays I mentioned are all Irish authors. We don't see many of those, and they don't see many of them in the West End, so that really is something really special to have them, and it always draws a very good audience. The Irish teams are very popular in the Isle of Man because of their standard.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that always amazes me in many ways when you look at some of the festivals or do the one acts or the Easter play festivals and such like. People take it very seriously. All the actors and actresses take it seriously, albeit they're all amateurs, only in as much as they're not being paid for what they're doing, certainly nothing to reflect on their performances. But also I always think just in order to set foot on the stage, you do have to have a degree of ego, I think. and that can sometimes lead to real problems. And yet, I don't know, maybe you can put me right if it's other the case, but by and large, it's rather like as John's saying, normally there's a great sense of sort of camaraderie, and maybe someone can tell me otherwise, but I've never sort of seen a massive ego clash between the teams. It always seems to be that everyone's there to do their best, have a good time, but it's always very
supporting each other in drama. I think that's something. The one change I would say, and I don't know whether you agree, Mark, I would say over the last certainly 20 years, there's certainly been a breaking down of barriers between associations.
Yes,
It used to be very much,
yes.
you are part of this
Yes.
society, Legion
Yes,
players, that's
yes,
it.
yes.
You are Legion players through and
Yes.
through. And I remember I used to be Arbury players, and there was one particular actor, I won't name them for the sake of the shame, the scorn which was put upon them for daring to act with Russian players down the road.
Yeah.
All of it is 2 miles down the road.
Yeah.
But that's certainly gone. I mean, I remember talking to one individual backstage at one of the festivals saying, as much as it's great having the awards, wouldn't it be great if we could just turn up and perform and just enjoy the performance and sing, whether it's that extra thrill or the need to have those awards, which gives people the incentive to want to enter. As you say, that's like ego, competitive edge, which puts people into it. But that's something that I've noticed over more recent years, which I've really enjoyed, actually, is seeing people relax in their drama. This one, certainly the fear. I mean, I've never felt fear like it this last year when we did one performance in the One Act Festival. I stood backstage shaking before you walk on, but it's that thrill, that excitement that you get backstage, and the support you have. I mean, even if things don't quite go to plan, there's the support that you get from other people because they've all been there before. In that
the amazing
situation.
thing is when you listen to the professional world, it's no different in their world. People get really nervous and being sick in a bucket on the side of the stage. It's amazing, isn't it? So we think that they mustn't have nerves like we do, but they do.
They do. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, of course, which we've hinted at there as well, and that all these things, you think the amount of work involved, not just, it's fine being on the stage and getting your share of the limelight and doing your piece, but of course none of it would happen without this whole army of all the volunteers behind the scenes, whether it's actually practically with the play itself, doing the prompt, doing the lighting, doing the sound, doing the SM, etc. And then, of course, another army of people doing all the admin, the setting up, the legals, everything to actually get these festivals underway. And it just wouldn't happen without them.
The volunteers are MADFA.
Yes, tremendous, absolutely. And over the years, there's been so many people that have come in and out helping, and hopefully they have got out of it as much as we've received from them, because it really is a joint effort. And also, I must make mention to the audience, they've stuck with us, and sometimes it hasn't been easy. And that's the thing, of course, with the 7 nights of plays, we can't guarantee you like everyone. That's just the fun of a festival. But they still stick with it, the audience. It's amazing, really.
You never know what you're going to get.
No.
As you say, there are certain, I could never imagine of watching Ernest in a modern setting.
Absolutely.
Or seeing certain things that you see in some of the festivals. But it's that freshness that comes to it that's really really exciting.
Yeah, well, you never know. As you say, just in a few days, you get the whole gamut in that there are people who will like to do some of the classics. There'll be people who like to reinterpret some of the classics. You'll get people who just are going to put something on because they want to put it on because they really enjoy doing it, and it's the hell of actually going out and the joy of performing, even though they might not even be that worried about how well the play does in the actual competition. They just like to be part of it and perform it. And then you see the ones who have clearly got everything very much targeted, and the play and the cast and everything has been chosen with sort of winning in mind and with the festival in mind. And we were talking about this just a little bit earlier. You see some pieces which are, I think the regulars that say, that's a very good festival piece. It sort of ticks all the boxes, as it were.
And I've got a feeling that some of the plays coming in the future might just be about COVID.
Yeah. Oh, crikey. Yeah. That's almost like touching the third rail, talking about COVID in a play now. It's quite I'm not sure if we're quite ready for that. It's a bit too soon. Yeah. Although I remember watching the thing on Dad's Army where they was trying to say that it was 20 years when that came out. It was 20 years. Was it too soon? Yeah. Right, we're going to wait 20 years for COVID plays.
Yes.
Yeah, even though I think it's possibly too soon.
Absolutely.
To pick up on your point there, Michael, but just about the festival, was the fact that people do get that. It's all the backstage crew. They are there for that week, and a lot of times it's that. Sometimes societies. You mentioned egos before. How did people get that? They want to be on the stage, and they don't normally always have the support to be able to put backstage. The good thing about the Easter Festival is that you have that full backstage crew that are there for the week. Anything that you need, you tell them that it's there, it's available to them, and they send everything over in advance. And in effect, the entry fee is what's paid. Everything else is put on. They get an allowance to come over and put the play on. you wouldn't get that in
Absolutely.
and
the
particularly perform in the
amazing thing
space
is, John, all those people that help backstage and take usually the week off work, it's all sort of no money involved. You know, they don't get paid.
Yeah,
so
it's just for the
fantastic,
love of
really.
the theatre.
Yeah. I think it would be very remiss of me not to say that the Isle of Man Arts Council have been absolutely solid in their support of the Easter Festival. So much so that I would even say without their help, this festival wouldn't be going today. So I really would like to put that on record. And also to Manx Radio, because they're marvellous. You ask them for any support and they're always there to help. So thank you to Manx Radio.
And has it got harder over the years, you think, that you've been involved? Because I think, well, clearly we're in fairly straitened times now for an awful lot of people. And as we've been hinting at, things have changed, tastes have changed, audiences have changed, the way people move around maybe. And at the moment, the big musicals are very much in, as John was saying, and perhaps the smaller straight drama pieces are not quite so much in vogue amongst the majority of regular theatre goers. Do you think is it getting harder to actually get people to sort of engage with these sort of festivals?
Well, I think it ebbs and flows, I would say, rather than, it's not on a descent. It's ebbs and flows. And one of the amazing things was that after COVID, we thought, oh gosh, we're really going to struggle now to try and get people back. That wasn't the case. Once the entry forms went out, they came back. And this year, it's just going to be absolutely fabulous for next year. The entries are better than ever. So that, it does ebb and flow, and hopefully we're on the flow at the moment.
Having the excitement of having not only the One Act Festival, but the Easter Festival. We've sort of only briefly touched on the One Act Festival, which usually takes place at the end of February, beginning of March. This year, or next year, as you say, is going to be alongside and integrated with the Easter Festival for one larger festival, all performing at the Gaiety Theatre, which will be quite something to behold.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll only have one adjudicator, whereas they normally have an adjudicator each. This time, it'll be one adjudicator adjudicating the lot. So it'll be a very interesting festival. We'll have to wait and see, hope it works. We'll have to wait until the audience give us their feedback, which is so important. And we will then talk about it probably forever and see how we go on.
Stories that last for years and years, and there's always cases. Yes. Every time we sit in the green, there's always the old stories that come up. Oh, well, I said the wrong line at that point, and we're still there an hour and a half later because it's a play within a play. The things that come back over and over again. But it's that gets the green room feel and getting people involved and still involved in theatre today. So Totally. Well, I think that's it for this green room. It's been lovely talking to you today. Michael, thanks very much for dropping in to our little virtual green room here. And yes, as you say, onwards and upwards.
Thank you, Howard.